The participants are those who registered for it. Hopefully, we will share with you the PowerPoint documents, the other thing, so that we organize the discussion after the panelists. The online participants will have the chance to give comments and questions on the Q&A in Zoom. We will coordinate this with the online participants. As for those in Kasala and Sudan, we please write your comments and questions and give it to the moderator in the room, Nazigo Nafisa. Then moderators will choose 3 comments or questions and will listen to them so that we organize questions and comments from different areas. Hopefully you be patient in this so that the session go very smoothly. We'll start listening from the panelists. We'll start with discussing the Sudanese context. Hala, what is the public context related to guardianship and protectorship in Sudan, and how they impact in the status quo of the woman participation? Especially, we are in a state of rebuilding and military reform and disarmament. All of this need women as the global expertise tell us. Over to you. I greet you all, greet Niveen and Mulki, and hello Limia. Thank you to have me in this common session between SIHA and MUSAWAH. Towards an egalitarian family laws. I would like to start and shed the light on the intersections between the public and the private in the issue of guardianship is crucial. Guardianship is just not just limited to family laws and is not limited to the household. It has its expansions on in the other existing forms, privately or publicly. You cannot also unsee in Sudan that we have the worst family law that I can imagine in the world. We have a family law that where guardianship and belittling women have a great role unfortunately,
النساء السودانيات إنه
despite
الإصلاح
the
السياسي،
pioneer
ورغم
women in
إنه
political
النساء
movements and
السودانيات لعبوا دور
activism,
كبير جدا في
and
تغيير
despite that
الأنظمة
women played a
تحديدا
great role
خلال
in changing
ثورة
regimes, especially
19
during
ثورة 2019 أبريل
uh,
المجيدة.
in
كانت
April
60% من المتظاهرات كانوا
2019,
متواجدات
60% of
في الجهة
the
الأمامية،
protesters were
لكن
women in the
إحنا
forefronts.
نشاطنا ده كله
But
بيحدث في إطار
this activism
منظومة بتاعة
took
قهر
place
وصلنا
in an
لها
oppressive
بالقوانين
system,
والسياسات التي
legitimized
تحددها
by the
المسألة
policies and
بتاعة
laws,
ولاية الرجل على
where
المرأة
the
وقوامة
guardianship of
وسيطرة
men of a
الرجل
woman are
على
present.
المرأة. فدي مسألة مهمة جدا.
This
أنا
is very
عايزة
important.
أضيف
I would
يعني
like to
قبل ما
shed
أتكلم عن
the
إنه
light
نحن
before I speak
يعني
that
واحدة برضو من الإشكالات في
one of the problems
الولاية
of the
وعدم
guardianship
تواجدنا في المساحات
and
العامة
our
إنه
absence
نحن
in the
ما
public
عندنا
affair,
القدرة
that
على
we are not
التأثير
able
على
to
اتخاذ القرار في
influence
المساحات العامة. وعشان
the
كده
decision making
يعني
in
احنا
the public
أصبحنا
space.
في يوم
Hence,
15 أبريل الملعون اللي هو
we woke up
اليوم ده يصادف
in
الذكرى الثانية
April 15
لاتحاد
to
السودان البشعة
today is the second anniversary of
والحملة
the uh,
المنظمة للفظاعات اللي بيتم
horrendous
فيها استغلال
war
أجساد النساء
where
وانتظامهم.
atrocities are
ونحن
committed
في يوم
on
15
women
أبريل
bodies.
لعام
We woke
23
up
كلنا كنساء
on April
في
15,
حالة من الصدمة
2023.
والذهول،
All
لأنه
women
إحنا
were
لم
shocked
نكن جزء من
because
اتخاذ
we had
القرار،
not been part of the
ولأنه
decision
القرار
making,
دائما بيتم اتخاذه
because the
بعيد
decision
وما
had
كان عنده
always been
قدرة
away
في
from us, and
التأثير
we had
على
not been able
السياسات
to
في ثورة
influence the
وفي تغيير بتاع نظام
policies
إحنا لعبنا فيه
in
دور أساسي.
a transitional period we were a
والحقيقة
great part of.
إنه
In fact,
يعني رغم تواجدنا زي ما قلت في
despite
المساحات
our
العامة
presence in
وخطوات
the public
قوية جدا،
space for a
لكن
long times,
انخراطنا في العمل السياسي
but our
وانخراطنا في العمل العام
engagement in the
تحتضن
political work
مفاهيم الولاية
was
بشكل
governed by
أساسي.
concepts of
ونحن هنا في
guardianships
السودان
and
حتى
protectorships.
النساء زي ما
In Sudan,
كلكم عارفين
as you all know,
الموجودات في المساحات العامة، احنا كم مرة ومرة سمعنا إنه
we
أنت
had
ما
always
عندك
heard
ولي
that you don't
أو
have a guardian.
في امرأة ما عندها ولي.
They
يعني
say
حتى
always this is a
إذا
woman
كنا
without a
موجودين في
guardian.
المساحات العامة،
Even if
إذا كنا
we are
بنحاور
found in the
المعلمات
public
أو
space, if we are
الضباط أو
teachers,
شغالات في مختلف
activists,
المجالات
or
المهنية،
in any other
المطالب
fields,
منك إنه
we
أنت
are
تثبتي دائما
always
إنه لديك
demanded
احترام
to show that
لسلطة
we
الولي ما
respect
حولك. والولي
the
ما
authority
في
of the
المساحات
guardianship.
العامة بتتقمصوا
The
حياة
guardianship
الرجال الحولك،
in the
وهم
public
ممكن يكونوا في
sphere
أوقات
are
كثيرة
masked
جدا
by
أصغر
the
سنا،
men
أقل
around you
خبرة، أقل
who
معرفة،
can be less
لكن
experienced,
رغم
younger
كده
than you.
هم
But despite that,
تلقائيا يضعوا
they
نفسهم
spontaneously
في مكان الولي.
they put
والولي
themselves on in the
بيتحكم
position
في
of the
المؤسسات
guardian.
التعليمية
This also
وحتى
takes
في
place in the
الأحزاب
educational
وخاصة في الأحزاب السياسية.
systems
طبعا
and
الأحزاب السياسية
institutions and
بتتكلم عنها
political
كثير جدا لأنها هي
institutions. I wanted to talk about this
المشكلة اللي
also
بتتجلى
briefly
فيها إنه مسألة
because
الوصول للسلطة بشكل
the
أساسي
political institutions
والتسيير
are
فيها
where
المشهد
the
تحت الولاية. لكن
access and
حتى في
power is
المؤسسات
manifested,
التعليمية
but
حتى رغم
it is
تفوق
also manifested in the educational institutions.
الرجال، نحن بنكون دائما
We are
لازم نظهر
always put in the position where
قيمتنا
we
عند
have
الأولياء.
to show that
أنا
we have
حقيقة
guardians.
حبيت أشارككم
I
اللوحة
wanted
دي، وهي
to
لوحة مأخوذة
share with you this
يعني من صورة
painting,
حقيقية لو
which
بتتذكروا.
is derived from a
الصورة
real
دي هي
photo.
مأخوذة من
This photo
برلمان
was
نظام
taken
البشير.
from the parliament of
برلمان
al-Bashir
نظام
regime.
البشير. طبعا الممارسات تحت الولاية هي موجودة عند
The
الأحزاب
practices
السياسية، إذا
of
كانت أحزاب سياسية
guardianships
تقليدية
also are
أو
present
أحزاب
in political
سياسية
institutions and
حديثة
parties, whether they are
بالصبغة
modern or traditional,
والعلمانية. في
even those
واقعنا
who
نحن
claim to be secular
اختلاف
and modern.
نوعي بسيط،
in our reality, the differences are quite narrow. But what is crucial is to impose guardianship. In the parliament of al-Bashir, 30% were women, but they were requested to be there.
ممكن في مساحات تانية
in other spheres
مؤسسات يعني أكثر حداثة وكده
in more modern institutions than the Islamist institutions. They realized earlier that they needed women in their corridors to mobilize. The same roles are played in the political parties. The seating might be different. The women and men can be in one place, but the dynamics of expressing opinions and accessing influence and capacity to influence in all the political parties are forbidden for women. Women are in the political parties governed by the guardianship. From my long experience in suffering, I remember I wrote an article. One of the figures in the political parties told me, why should you write in politics? You can write about women situations. In Sudan, we have the yard of women. Our houses are divided on the basis of power relations and on the guardianship. The women part are where they are. Even in our presence in the political institutions, we are demanded to occupy the yard of women. The area is specified for women, and that we don't have to have a political opinion allowing us to
اتخاذ القرار. يعني ده الوضع بشكل عام. نتج عنه
This is the general situation. And this has resulted in a great ordeal. We are facing many challenges. We are facing murder. We are facing a bleak reality, which is manifested on our bodies and which is used as a weapon of war. But at the same time, we are subjected to the worst forms of guardianship, which we have seen, which remain unprecedented. This is the truth. So this is what creates the domination of patriarchal structures in our lives, what we are subjected to in terms of very painful experiences. And we are now requested or told to not share our experiences, to remain silent, to remain unsharing of our ordeals and our terrible, harrowing experiences. Women's voices are considered disturbing. They considered as an impediment to men's mobilizations and quests for power. So therefore, we are required to be silent. So this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of our daily turmoils and our daily challenges as Sudanese women. We are found in multiple camps, in displacement houses, which are dominated by men and men's decisions. They decide our fate. Our needs are determined by men's evaluations. Food security is governed by the parameters set by men. Because when we think about displacement, we think about the power dynamics and the domination, the power dynamics and the constellations of power which come into play in these contexts, and how they manifest the worst challenges that we are faced by as women. This is just a quick introduction to the discussion, and thank you very much, Dr. Marwa.
شكرا أستاذة هالة.
Thank you very much, Ustaza Hala.
يعني إحنا بنشوف إزاي إن
This, we've seen how we speak about the context. It's very important to speak about the context, because the context determines how we move forward, how we deal with texts, because the text, theological texts, are not disconnected from social realities or social context. So therefore, we're going to hear from Dr. Muki, and we have observed that we have shared some directives. We have interpretation for those who are in need, from Arabic to English and English to Arabic. And whoever wants to participate should feel free to do so. But we are also very cognizant of the need to protect people, but we really ask you and enjoin you not to share personal information about the participants, just for safety considerations. So Dr. Mulki will now speak. We have the questions. We will now move to the Holy Quran and how it's dealt with issues pertaining to guardianship within the text. So how can we interpret the texts which exist within the Quranic text? Because most of the time, it actually limits women's political participation. This is not conclusive. It's not a conclusive decision by the Quranic text. However, we would like to ask how we should be able to look at the ethos of the Quran and the Quranic state, and how it governs human relationships or human interactions. So you have 15 minutes to actually present on this topic. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. I would like to thank SIHA for allowing me this opportunity to participate and to collaborate with you. I am very honored to be here amongst you, and I would like to extend a very special shout out and greetings to my Sudanese colleagues. I'm very happy to participate in all things Sudanese. I'm going to deal with the issue which Dr. Marwa has introduced, or the questions that have been posed very quickly through a PowerPoint presentation. So first of all, I'm going to build on what my colleague Dr. Hala has actually presented. There is a direct connection between women's marginalization and discriminations against women, specifically within the familial sphere, as well as within the public domain. So we therefore need to connect these two elements. It's a very direct and intricate relationship. The second thing that I would just like to reiterate is that there is a patriarchal discourse which actually reinforces these patterns of marginalization. It is a masculine, patriarchal, religious discourse. However, there are other elements which also contribute, but this discourse is very paramount to consolidating very specific patriarchal conceptualizations. So we'd like to go back to how these issues have been consolidated through interpretation patterns which have existed in our social context. So I'm just going to look at this very briefly and to give a quick diagnostic of how we're able to understand guardianship and male domination as two concepts which don't mean that we are going to actually abolish these two concepts, but however, to look at how we can reinterpret these concepts. So if we look at the if we try and create a legal system based on familial laws or family laws which are more equitable and more just, we are faced with obstacles because there is such a entrenched understanding of guardianship as a form of domination, a form of power, and a form of hierarchical interactions between the man and the woman. And this is something which is very intrinsic within the public sphere or general dominant narratives, understandings of religion. So we need to understand this. So there have been many studies which are very important, one of which is been conducted by my colleague, Dr. Umayma Abu Bakr. We have created these studies in order to actually challenge these understandings, these dominant understandings, which are both patriarchal understandings of the Quranic text and in terms of Islamic jurisprudence, as well as the Hadith text. So Dr. Umayma has actually deconstructed the idea of qawamun in Arabic, which exists in the surah entitled النساء, which actually means that we need to actually deconstruct the meaning of the word in terms of guardianship, in terms of what At-Tabari has mentioned, in terms of what Muhammad Abdu has mentioned in relation to the analysis of the term. And this is a term which explains the role of the male spouse in terms of his duty to provide for his female spouse and for his children. But this analysis has then created a conceptualization which has slipped from this duty towards establishment of a form of hierarchy which places men on at the paramount of power and has given them privilege to the detriment of women folk. In relation, it has reified certain characteristics, which prove that men have a superior brain capacity, intellectual capacities, and therefore all these understandings have created a relationship between the husband and wife, which creates a form of hierarchy of power, so that there is a ruler and a governed or a subject. And this has been based on the analysis and interpretation of different texts within the Quran, which have been instrumentalized in order to create this sense of hierarchy, which places men in a detrimental position or in inferior position in relation to men. This is cited in Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, where we see that there is an enjoyment to engage in certain behaviors within the marital relationship, which also reiterates the advantages, entrenches the advantages of men, and which places them within higher positions of power. If we look at the interpretations in the modern era, specifically those of Muhammad Abdu, we see that there has been an interpretation of these concepts that essentializes men's nature and therefore creates reinforces understandings of characters or characteristics which are related to the nature of men and women and how they are different intrinsically. So therefore, it's extremely important for us to understand how these conceptualizations have come about and how they pour into patriarchal understandings. So in terms of guardianship, what is this idea of guardianship? The guardianship of the father, the relationship to grandfathers, and the relationship in relation to siblings, brothers. This is related to 12 ayahs which exist within the surah entitled Al-Baqarah. And if we look and compile all these texts which pertain
ثلاث حاجات مهمة: أن الطرفين يلتزموا بحدود الله، أن يلتزموا بمبادئ القرآن الأخلاقية المهمة يذكر فيها في كل آيات الطلاق فكرة التفاضل، التشاور، المعروف، الإحسان، وأن المرأة لها دور ولها حق ولها حق في اتخاذ القرار في الطلاق. ولكن الفقهاء والمفسرين خدوا هذه الآيات وبالذات الآيتين دول اللي أنا حضراتكم شايفينها، وبناء عليه وأيضا استنادا على بعض الأحاديث رغم أن هناك أحاديث تانية تناقضها، ركزوا وفكرة حكم أن الرجل له الولاية على المرأة في إطار الأسرة. ولكن هل
دكتورة ملكي معلش ثانية واحدة لأن ظاهر الترجمة الإنجليزي فيها مشكلة. Can you please let us know when the English translation is back?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
لا أبدا، عفوا.
Sorry, doctor.
كويس.
Can you hear me? Is the translation back?
Yes.
It's back? اوكي اتفضلي يا دكتورة ملكي.
You can proceed, Mulki. The words of guardians are mentioned in Quran.
هكمل يا مروة عشان أسمع أصوات.
ممكن تعملوا ميوت لو سمحتوا؟
Can you just mute your microphones?
في حد رافع إيده يا مروة.
Someone is raising his hand. Just zoom in the presentation so we can
ما
see.
أعتقدش إن الدكتورة ملكي هتقدر تعمل ده، هي حاجة
I don't think Mulki can do this. This is because of Zoom with Ramo.
وبيقولوا لك إذا سمحتي لو تقدري تتكلمي ببطء شوية.
They ask you just to speak a little slowly. Marwa is chasing me, that's why. I'm sorry. The guardian or guardian are mentioned in Quran, and they are mentioned in the name of protector, advocate, friend, mentioned as a adjective, a trait for God and our relationship with God, mentioned in other verses as who's righteous to be guardian. It is not mentioned at all as authority, as hierarchy.
طيب دي واحدة أنا مش عارفة ليه I cannot.
I don't feel I want to move the slides. I'll share again and see if I can move the slides. Can you see the slides? Now we can see it. You have 5 minutes.
It's not allowing me to إن أنا أغير.
I'm not allowed to change the slides.
Okay.
دي واحدة.
Just hang on. I want to try it again.
شايفينه يا مروة؟
Can you see the slide?
It's not a slideshow, صح؟
It's not a slideshow. It's fine. It's fine. You can just move down.
حتى من غير.
Okay.
Okay.
شايفين دلوقتي؟
Can you see now?
اوكي معلش انا مش شايفه السلايد شو بس اتمنى ان
I cannot see the slide show. I hope the colleagues can see it because I have just 5 minutes.
الموضوع كنت هقف على الانعكاسات لهذا
I wanted just to stop at the reflections of this patriarchal understanding of the guardianship, but I'll focus now on the alternative review. An Islamic feminist for Islam, meaning all Islamic verses, and Niveen will highlight this, and comprehensive reading of verses. All Quran is important, not specific verses. In Nisa Surah, we don't have to just focus on verse 34. We read all the surah. It starts that, all people, we created you from one soul. That taqwa is important for all. We will focus on the moral message of Quran. It doesn't mean that a comprehensive, vague perspective. All Quranic verses, especially those where God invites us to do something and voice something, always ends with moral concepts, and they are repeated: consultation, grace, and virtue, and that we have to avoid injustice. All of these concepts are important. We have to link them to the provisions that we derive from Quran. They have to be readings that take into consideration what is mentioned in the historical context, the textual context, and other contexts. Hence, let's look at the guardianship. It is mentioned 3 times as guardians in Nisa Surah, verses 334 and 115, and in other surahs. How we understand this? The Quran is not random. It is provided from God. The idea that the word is mentioned in 3 contexts. If we make a comprehensive reading and link these verses, we will find that the guardianship entails fairness and justice. In the case of marriage, he has to spend on women. In the other meaning, in Al-Ma'idah verses, it is a call for both. All those who believe, women and men, we have to be fair. In the protectorship, in At-Tawbah Surah, believers, male and females, as we know, it could have been saying just believers, but God wanted just to order us, men and women. We have to enjoy good and forbid evil. God started with the responsibility of enjoying good before mentioning prayer, fasting, and other, which means that the enjoying the good is the responsibility not limited to the family. In Al-Imran Surah, there has to be ummah that enjoy good and forbid evils. That meaning this is God's words that emphasizes the responsibility of enjoying good and forbidding evil in the public sphere and the private sphere. Can I complete? You have 2 minutes. In the current context, in the modern state, with all its problems, with the system we have that is based on citizenship, it's a very important concept. Constitutions and citizenships that emphasize equitable rights for men and women. And in the Muslim context, the centrality of the moral Quranic principles, if we rethink this and we make it the center, the Quran emphasizes justice and fairness, and as you have seen, the mutual cooperation in enjoying good and forbidding evil. From an Islamic feminist approach, we are allowed to rebuild these principles on the system of Quran. This is a campaign conducted in Egypt that highlighted the patriarchal guardianship. They are in an isolated island and they wanted to be rescued, and they are asked to have the guardian's permit. We have all been in this situation in one context or another. There is another lady working and she wants to book a room in a hotel, and she is asked that she has to have a permit of a guardian. She can be a teacher, a doctor, or whatever, and she cannot have a birth certificate for her kid, and she cannot travel without her husband. she cannot also decide on the health services for her kids. We all know these problems in the Muslim context, and they illustrate the incomplete citizenship of women because of the patriarchal guardianship. Thank you, Marwa. Thank you, Mulki. I think we can summarize the doctor's speech that we started with Hala, that the context is important, the Sudanese context. Mulki showed us that even in our attempt to understand the Quran and derive provisions, the context is important. The historical and textual context of Quran are important. We have seen how interpreters produced specific understanding of guardianship and protectorship influenced by the context. We are in a new context in modern state where the law stipulates that we are the same. We have to understand the basis in this context. We have to understand the concept in this context. There has to be a dialogue between our life today and the context and the text. We have to look at guardianship from equality perspective. Equality in fairness, grace, and creation and cooperation in enjoying good and forbidding evil. We have to understand guardianship in a way that would not omit it from our lives, but there has to be equality between us as humans. This is a summary of what Dr. Mulki has presented. We will stay with Quran, but this time with further focus on the political participation of women. We'll go to Naveen. I'll ask you two questions. How does the Quran address the political participation of women? What are the arguments derived from Quran that could be applied in the Islamic context in war and peace? In one aspect. In another aspect, how can women who are discriminated in this hierarchical system based on religion, how can they deal with the psychological impacts, but also from a religious approach? You have 15 minutes.
دكتورة مروة، أنا شرفتني أكون معاكم النهاردة. السلام عليكم جميعا في السودان الشقيق. شكرا لصيحة ولمساواة. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد.
I'd like to thank SIHA for this opportunity, and blessings to our blessed Prophet and all his followers. So God in all his glory speaks to us about the guidance and the healing that we find in this text, and this text is a guidance and a healing for those who are blessed, but does not help the oppressors. So we'd like to speak about the merging of the different parameters of Islamic text and guidance and theories based on psychotherapy in order to allow us to address issues pertaining to trauma and conflict. There are many therapeutic pathways which can be followed. I'm going to speak about two of these therapeutic pathways which are derived from the Quranic text. So I'd just like to highlight the difference between two concepts. The concept of healing, which we find in the Quranic text. We also find the issue pertaining to thinking or reflecting, finding solutions. And that means observing, reflecting, and reflecting on the terms, reflecting on the spirit of the text, and reflecting on how the workings of our heart. So this concept actually transcends limitations and enjoins us to observe human nature, to observe the universe as a whole, since God implores us to look and to reflect on how the earth and the heavens were created. So these verses enjoin us to actually look at God's signs within the universe and to conflate the two elements, the terms of healing and in terms of observation and reflection. So this process of reflection, it starts off internally and it projects outwards, and the healing process facilitates these processes so that we're able to find these conclusions, to find these solutions to the challenges, so that we're able to attain a state of healing, a state of empowerment, a state of capacity, which allows us to face challenges and the travails of everyday life. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually look at the Quranic text in detail, and I'm going to try and connect these texts to bring them from the abstract to the context in which we live, specifically the political spheres. I'd like you to just say next, so that we're able to follow the presentation. So we still see if you just say next, so that they move the PowerPoint along. Please proceed. So now you can see the importance of women's participation in political life. Can you see, what can you see now? We see next, please. So now we see the importance of women's political participation. Muslim women's political participation. Okay, this is what you can see. Excellent. I'm sorry about this slight lapse. So it's very important to reiterate that women participate in political participation as much as she can. And this relates to casting her vote in elections. And this is also related to Islamic history, where she pledges her allegiance to specific movements and how she participates in these political spheres. When we speak about the pledge, we speak about the pledge between the people who are living in Medina and how they moved to Mecca. So this is called the pledge of the Aqaba, the first pledge, where women first swore allegiance and swore allegiance in relation to the pledge which was contained in the Quranic text. It then came and appeared within the Quranic text, and which you can see on the screen, and where it orders the Prophet, peace be upon him, to accept the pledge of women folk. And there has been a collaboration or a presence, a joint presence of both men and women within this pledging process. And anybody who argues against this means that they have not reflected on the text or have not observed the text of the Quran. So it pertains to observing certain rules about how things are governed, and what we see in the Quranic text in relation to who bestows rights on others and who actually removes the rights of certain others. This falls into the parameters which govern women's political participation, and which actually allow or reinforce the understanding that women do have the right to participate politically. As for women's observation or adoption of important positions, I'm going to just speak about the example of the Queen of Sheba in Surah Al-Naml, and so that we are actually able to observe the characteristics which are required for power, and how God has chosen and elected this wonderful example, and how this wonderful example is embodied in the shape of a woman. So if we look at the story of the Queen of Sheba, as it appears in the following verses, she has said, I have received a great holy book from Suleiman, and that she has said, listen to me, please give me some guidance in relation to what you observe. So this explains that she has been very equitable in her narratives, and in how transparent she has been, how she has elected, how she has asked for the people, for the public to actually give their opinions. This is the highest form of democracy which is manifested in her attitude, and how she has enjoined people to participate with no divisions or no preferences. So the idea that there is this notion of consensus, which is extremely important, shines through the text, and which appears within a state, within a unified state, and within a unified political entity. So the issue that we have today is about consensus. However, it's not limited to the idea of consensus, but it is something that we can actually look at the fact that within the words there is no sense of tyranny, that the Queen makes transparency paramount to her positions of governance, and how she manages the state or the state or the kingdom which she governs. So the story continues to show or to elucidate important modalities of governance which have been adopted by the Queen. It introduces forces, negative forces, or sites of destitution, and it shows the advice of the Queen, who speaks about the destruction of the oppressors of villages and areas. So it enjoins people to observe these examples, and therefore the Queen of Sheba shows her military force or her military cloud, and so that she, according to this cloud, she's able to take the decisions. This makes us think of how modern states govern themselves, how modern states actually have to enjoin advisory councils before engaging in war. So this sets a precedent, and it actually transcends the understanding that we have of a time which we feel is in the past. It allows us to think about the modern conceptualizations and how we think about modern governance systems, and how we set the parameters of war and peace in relation to material reservations. And the story goes on. Suleiman does not accept this present, the present which he, Queen of Sheba sends him, but the Queen does not succumb, and she goes out to consult once again, and this exhibits her great courage and the fact that she is intent on saving the lives of her people, and she submits herself to the will of God. So this demonstrates her resilience in the face of quick changes, and to her ability to take the adequate and ideal decisions which are related to the context she finds her in order to maintain the dignity of her people. And therefore we see that this example, which is derived from the Quran, sets a great role model, and we see that all our nations are now in a position of weakness, and therefore we are in dire need of good governance, and therefore if our leaders would actually take inspiration from this wonderful analogy and this story, which is derived from the Quranic text in relation to the fate of the Queen of Sheba. This is what we need now in our modern times. And the Quranic text equally presents us another example of governance, the example of Pharaoh, and how he has dealt with the minorities, the minority groups who ended up following the example and the guidance of the Prophet Moses. We look at the two pivotal texts within within the Quranic text, and he says to the people, I am your God Almighty, and he does not hesitate in actually subjecting his people to mass destruction. And therefore we are able to actually ascertain that the example of the successful ruler is not related to the gender of the person involved, but it is actually involved and related to specific characteristics related to diplomacy, transparency, resilience in the face of extreme change and quick change, the idea that the governor is intent on preserving the rights and dignity of his people. All this allows us to look at a historical precedent of the highest caliber. And it's also worth mentioning that the Prophet, peace be upon him, actually followed these principles of consensus, because he was, even though he was not in any manner obligated to listen to the advice of his companions or to even consult with them, because we see that this was the appropriate manner of dealing with people. We see that the Prophet himself, who was inspired by divine passion, was engaged in consensus and in consultation with his peers. So the question that poses itself, why does God give us the wonderful example of a woman? What does this, how does this encourage us as women to actually participate in the political sphere, so that we are certain that things will not align themselves and not be in their best form without our participation, without our contributions. So the importance of good governance and the importance of reiterating the very essential participation of women, which allows for peaceful hearts and for peaceful coexistence and a good cultural and social environment.
شكرا ان انت بدأت لنا المداخلة بفكرة التفكر والتدبر والشفاء بالقرآن، ووريتينا ازاي من نموذجين راجل وست
You
انهي فيهم
told
اللي
us
كان بيشتغل بالشورى،
from
انهي فيهم اللي كان بيشتغل بالشفافية، انهي فيهم اللي كان بيحكم بالحق
which one
الدبلوماسي وعلى
is
مصلحة
using
الشعب
diplomacy and the interest of
الرجل
his
والمرأة. أنا ما
nation.
كانش هو ده المهم،
The gender was
ازاي
not
بيدرب
important.
القائد.
It was the behavior and the attitude of the leader. Let's move on now to Dr. Lamia. We have spoken, Lamia, about religion and context, but what about the history of Sudanese women and the realities across the history? How can we learn from Sudanese Kandakas and how women participated as a political and decision leader in decision-making leader in Sudan, and how Sudan today can refocus on the women political participation today. You have 10 minutes and you can close with a text that you have written about your lived experience leaving your country. Thank you, Marwa. I am in a very hard situation. I'll try briefly to explain the context of the Sudanese woman and how this impacts their political participation and how work as a political leader. In the same time, this proves that Sudanese women have the capacity to become political leaders, but the context in which they live is why the situation has changed. I'll focus on 4 stages where women were present, but was that excellent or not in political participation? I'll start. I have also some photos that at the peak of Islam in Sudan, women maintained their norms and culture as an African. Sudan, as part of Africa, before the birth of Jesus, we had norms that we were governed with, part of which are present and existing now. From the photos, you can see that the norms are present in Sudan. We start with the period between BC times, and that means the governing queen, because there were some queens that were not governing, but the Kandaka was the governing woman, governing queen. Even those that had husbands, if they were governing, they were called Kandakas. I'll give examples of 3 Kandakas: Amani Tera, Amani Rinas, Amani Shakhta. Amani is derived from the god Amun. For example, the queen Amanirias, it means the gift of Amun, the gift that was granted by Amun. Amanirinas governed from 40 to 10 BC.
الفترة دي ممكن تكون ما كانت المسيحية يهودية منتشرة وكان السودان جزء منها بتأثر برضه قبل اليهودية. طيب
the Jewish people were spread in Sudan. Amanirinas, the queen. Just move to the next slide.
فبرضه أنا ده حكيتها اللي هي التعددية القانونية أو التعددية في السياق الثقافي.
Also, I have highlighted the multiplicity of laws in Sudan. Amanirinas, the queen, had governed from 40 to 10 BC.
الملكة الحاكمة.
She was the governing queen that and was based in the Kushan and Merovingian civilization. She was so strong that when Romans occupied Egypt and Asia, she opposed this and she wanted to protect the Nubian kingdom. So she attacked Romans up until expelling them beyond Aswan, and she captured some Romans and she expelled their garrison.
الامبراطور
And she
الروماني
captured
اغسطس
some
راجع من
statues.
ارليها فقاد جيش كبير
The
جدا جدا،
Augustus, the emperor, wanted to
فكان صعب
revenge.
التغلب عليها، فلجأ يلجأ
She was
انه
so
يتعاقد
hard to
معاها وعمل معاها
conquer,
اتفاقيه.
and
وكانت
so
الاتفاقيه انه هو ما يجوز
he signed an agreement with
الجنوب
her
الشماليه في السودان
that stipulates
واعفاهم من
he
الجزيره.
doesn't have to occupy
لكن
part
بعد
of the
فتره
Nubian
انتصر عليها
territory.
وهزمها.
After
فجاءت
some time,
بعدها
he conquered her.
نمشي next
After
please. فجاءت بعدها
after her
الكنداكا
came the
أماني
Kandaka,
شخيتي.
Aman
حكمت من
Shakhiti,
10 قبل الميلاد لحد
who
29
governed
في الميلاد،
from
وهي
10
كانت
BC
قائدة
up until
عسكرية
the
شجاعة جدا
first
جدا،
year
يعني
AD.
حتى
She was a
مشهورة في
very
المعارك بتاعتها الموجودة
courageous
حتى لو كانت
fighter,
وحوش كلها.
which was mentioned in
لما
the books of
أصرت إنها
history.
تهزم
She
الرومان
insisted
في
to
سنة
conquer
24 وهي
Romans
هزمتهم هزيمة
in
مطراف.
24 AD. She conquered them.
والمملكة الرومانية مملكة كبيرة جدا جدا.
The
يعني إذا
Roman
كانت
Empire was a
على
great
واحدة من
empire.
شفتها أحب أذكر إنها كانت
It's
فاقدة
worth
لإحدى عينيها.
mentioning that
كانت
Amani
صورة
Shakhta
موجودة في عين
had
واحدة موجودة في
only
السودان
one
وضاع عوراء.
eye.
فهي رغم كده قاتلت هذا الجيش وهزمت
Despite this,
الجيش
she led
الروماني
the army and conquered the
واخذته في
Roman
حرب
army.
ضد كبيرة جدا جدا
And she
في أقصى من النوبة حتى
ex-
بعد حتة اسمها
expelled them beyond the Nubian
حتة
territory,
اسمها
beyond
بعد جزيرة
an
ساموس.
area
anyway
called
الاتفاقية العقدتها مع
Samos
الرومان
Island.
استمرت
She
3 قرون،
signed
ويقال في
an
التاريخ
agreement
إنها
with the
هي التي
Romans that
أوقفت
continued
الغزو
for
الروماني لكل أفريقيا،
three
لأن الرومان كانوا حيستمروا من بعد مصر إلى السودان إلى
centuries.
أفريقيا، فثبتتهم
She
في هذه
stopped
المنطقة عشان
Romans
كده
from
الرومان لم يكونوا موجودين
expanding
في أفريقيا. next
to the
please.
African areas around Sudan.
عندنا الملكة أمانيتيرا
We have
اللي
also
هي
Amanitera,
سيدها آمون، اللي هي يعني
which
مثلا
means
يعني احنا مثلا بنقول في السودان عندنا خادم الله وهبة الله وكده، فهو نفس الاسماء دي.
she is the servant
هي
of Amun.
اماني شاخيتي بعد
Amani
انتصارها
Shakhiti
سوري معلش
after
امانيتيرا.
Amanitera.
طبعا نحن المهتم بالاثار السودانيه لما نزورها كل القصور دي موجوده لحد الان،
Those who are
الحمامات
interested in the
بيستحموا فيها
archaeology,
والساونا
we
بتاعتهم.
could see
فكانت
their
ملكات
bathrooms and
يعني
toilets.
مبجلات
They
ومبهجات
were
ومعيشات في مستوى
glorified
كبير جدا من الرفاهيه.
queens. They
الملكه
lived
اماني
in
سحقت
luxury.
يعني تيرا سحقت الاعداء وقتلت
Amanitera
منها
conquered
ياسين،
the
حتى
enemies,
انها ذكرت
and,
في الانجيل.
and
يعني
she was
في
mentioned in
الانجيل
the Bible.
في بعض المصادر بتقول ذكرت في
In one of
الانجيل
the sources
بالسبع
that
اعمال
she
الرسل
was
الاصحاح اللي هي صفحه
one of
826.
the Bibles.
تحدث ملاك الرب الى فيليب
Uh,
قائلا استيقظ
the
واسهر
angel
الى
of
الجنوب،
God
وايها الذي يذهب الى الاسفل
talked
الى
to one
الصحراء.
of the messengers and told
فاستيقظ
him
وذهب
to
ولمح رجلا
go
خصيا مثل
to
اثيوبيا. اثيوبيا طبعا زمان كانت هي
the
السودان.
land of Ethiopia.
كانت المنطقه كلها اسمها
Back in
السودان.
time, it
نتاكد
was
ان ليل كنداكا
Sudan,
كانت انه هذا استمر وكان ذو مرتبه عظيمه في ملكه
and
اثيوبيا الكنداكا.
she was a very
فأعتقد إنها
glorified
كانت
queen,
مذكورة في
Kandaga.
الإنجيل.
She was mentioned in the
فباقي
Bible.
تاريخ عظيم جدا جدا
This is
أكد
a
إنه
great
ممكن
history
الروافد اليهودية
emphasizing
موجودة كانت عندنا بحسب الأعراف
the
الأفريقية الآن موجودة عندنا.
leadership of
قبل
women
ما نفهم
according to the
الولاية
African
والقوامة الصورة
norms
الثانية next.
before
طيب
delving into guardianship
بعد
and
ذاك
other.
نحن بعد الفترة دي
After
ظهر
that,
العرب أو ظهر المسلمين
appeared
وصاروا
the
عرب وغير عرب،
Muslims,
لكن
Arabs
نحن
and
كجزاء
non-Arabs,
أو
but they did
كناس
not come as
سياسي يحكموا السودان ولو أي
invaders or
كأفراد أو
political
مجموعات لأسباب شخصية
governance.
بحثا عن
They
الجاه،
came
بحثا عن
as
المرعى،
groups
بحثا عن
seeking
السلطة.
pastoral
فهم كانوا
areas,
موجودين.
power,
فظهر
and
عندنا نوع
farming,
من أنواع الفكر الجديد
which
طلع عندنا
changed the
الدين
mindset of
الإسلامي.
Sudanese.
هو أصبح نوع من
And the
أنواع العمل
Islam
السياسي.
religion
أظهر
appeared
عندنا
and
الطرق
became
الصوفية التي
uh,
تحكم أفرادها.
a
ومن ضمن الطرق
political
الصوفية دي ظهر لنا
practice.
كمية من
We
السيدات لحد
had
الآن في
the
التاريخ عندنا ما
sophists
واضحين،
also.
لكن خسارة إنه
There were
النساء موجودين
so
فيها.
many women with the
فمن
suffix
هؤلاء
who were not
النساء
mentioned in
مثلا
the history. From these women,
مثلا نحن نعرف الشيوخ ما بنعرف يعني
we know,
الإمام المهدي اللي هو
we
أول
hear
كانت
of
دولة إسلامية تجد في السودان
Al-Mahdi
كلها.
Imam, which
كان
was the first
معلمه أو شيخه
Islamic
معلمته امرأة
state
اللي هي كانت
who had been
فمات
taught
في
by
البداية
another
كانت
sheikh
فاطمة بنت
who
الشيخ
had been
قويس
taught
والدزير.
by a woman.
من النساء برضو اللي كانوا موجودات عندنا عشان اختصر، اصلا الشيخ ابو دليك شيخ كبير جدا جدا تحت طرق صوفيه، عنده اتباع كميه خرافيه. الشيخ ابو دليك عندما توفى سالوه من الذي سيرثك المشيخه بعدك؟ فقال عائشه بنتي، رغم انه عنده اخوان، عنده اخوان. فده بيأكد لك انه حتى الدين لما كان موجود الدين الاسلامي في السودان لم يتعارض مع العرف اللي كان موجود او مع المملكه دي. طيب عندنا بيقولوا الترجمه خارج
We
interpretation.
have we have also
Ramu, can you let us know when the interpretation is back?
it's
I
back. Can you
suggest
can,
we continue
can you hear
because
you?
of time.
طيب عندنا مثلا
We have
يعني بعدين
also
كمان الخلاوي دي هي مدارس
back in time
قرآنية قبل
the
أن يكون في
Halawi
السودان المدارس
were
النظامية.
Quranic
فده
schools
كان
before
المعرفة اللي
the
عندنا ورائد
traditional
العلم،
schools.
ولم يدرس العلم، لم يدرس
The
القرآن
Quranic studies were
كمادة
the peak
دينية
of
إلا ما في
education,
علوم كبيرة جدا
and
جدا.
it
فهؤلاء السيدات
was not studied the
كانوا هم
Quran
بيديروا
as
علم
a religion.
الفهم والفقه
Women
والفتاوي
were
وحفظ
part
القرآن،
of
وكانوا
these
يلجأوا لهم
studies,
كثيرا
and they
جدا
were
في إصدار
resorted to
الفتاوي والأحكام.
for
الخلوة هي عبارة عن مملكة صغيرة. والخلوة هي
the
إنه
Khalwa was a very
الطلبة
small
والطالبات
kingdom
كانوا رجال ونساء،
where
هم
women
بيكونوا
and
مغنين
boys and
وتصرف
girls
عليهم هذه
they
الخلاوة
reside
للأكل
in
والشراب
the
والمعيشة.
Alawi
وهؤلاء
and
النساء كانوا
live there.
غنيات، اللي هم
Those
نساء
women
الجابية
there
وأمونة
were
بنت
very
عبود. أمونة
strong,
بنت
like
عبود هي
Amuna bint
أخت،
Abbud.
ممكن نمشي next please، هي أخت
Can we go to the
مهير
next
بنت
slide?
عبود.
She
next
is the
please.
sister of Meher bint Abbud.
أمونة بنت عبود دي هي طبعا عندها دور كبير جدا
Amuna bint
جدا، إنه
Abbud
هي
had a
هي
great
أخت
role.
طبعا إحنا بنعرف مهير بنت عبود اللي هي
We know
قائدة
Meher bint
الجيش
Abbud
القبيلة
who
الشايلية المحاربة ضد
led
الإنجليز وحتى أسرته.
the
لكن احنا نعرف
Shayi
عنها
tribe
انه امونه
to
بنت عبود دي
fight
كانت تملك خلاوي كثيره جدا
British,
جدا، وكانت
but
ستانه
Amuna
غنيه
bint Abbud had so many
وثريه وعندها
khalawis. She
ممتلكات
was
اخرى.
very rich,
لما جاء
and
الانجليز سووا لها وقف للرعايه
she had
الانجليزيه.
some
next
properties that were given by the British
نجي للملكه ستنا.
government as
ليس هناك يعني
endowments.
القليلين جدا
We
من
have
السودانيين يعرف انه طبعا
there
ملكه
is also
الشنجي اللي هي
Sittana
ورثت
Queen.
مملكه مروي الكبيره كلها، اللي هي الملكه الكوشيه والملكه
Little
الكوشيه والملكه الهنديه.
of
شندي
Sudanese
صار
know that
الملك بتاعتها
Shendi
منه في عام
is the last
1770
part
ملك
of
يسمى ستنا.
Marawi
الذكر لنا
kingdom.
ملكة ستنا
There
دي
was
هو
Sittana
الرحالة
Queen.
اسكتلندي بروس، ومورهيد هو اللي
The
كتبه في كتابه البلو نايل
Scottish
النيل الأزرق.
traveler
إنها كانت
mentioned
ملكة
Sittana
جميلة جدا
Queen,
جدا
that she
وقادرة،
was
وكانت
very
يعني
beautiful,
على
and
قدر
he
من
met
ما
her.
وصفه وصف حسي بأنها كانت جميلة، تلبس تاج من
She
الذهب
was
وتلبس فستان
so
أبيض
beautiful, and
خفيف
she had a golden
وشال في كتفها. لو لاحظتوا المجتمع
crown and
السوداني
a scarf on
معظم
her
السودانيات يعني حتى
shoulder.
مع الإسلام كان الكتف
Most
يعني
of
ما بنغطي كتفنا وجزء بسيط من الشعر.
Sudanese in the Islam
فيعني حتى في
did
أنثى
not
الإسلام
cover
كان النساء
their
المتزوجة
hair
تتغير
and
المظاهر
shoulder.
أو
Even
الحارات
in the
الشرقية
presence
اللي هي في زينة
of
وفي طبايب وفي
Islam,
لقمان.
so many
الملكة
norms
ستة
did
كانت
not
تحكم
change.
شندي رغم إنها زوجة
Sittana was
للملك
governing
وأم الوطن.
Shandi,
next.
even though she had her husband and son present.
طيب أنا هتكلم برضو عشان ما نكون بس بنتكلم عن الشمال. طبعا
As
معظم النساء بجزء من النساء اللي كانوا ماسكين الخلاوي
part
موجودين
of
في
the
الشرقاء
women
وأوسط
who
السودان،
were
لكن
governing
لا
the
ننسى جبال النوبة
Alawi
لأنه
were
كان
in
هناك.
eastern Sudan. But
معلش يا
let's not
جماعة لأنه
forget
أنا عندي عربي
Nuba
مقلوب وخط
Mountains.
العربي يكون مقلوب، أسفل الترجمة. فهي
Sorry
الأميرة
for
مندي
the
بنت
conflicting
السلطان
text.
عجبنا من جبال النوبة.
Oh, there's also the
مندي كانت مسلمة
Princess Mendi in Nuba Mountains. She was a
يعني
Muslim.
قادت جيشها
She
وحاربت
led
الإنجليز
the
بفترة طويلة
army
جدا
to
جدا
fight
وهزمتهم،
British, and she conquered
وكان
them.
عندها دور بارز في
She
المقاومة.
had a
وقفت ضد
prominent
العرب في
role
الشمال،
as an
وكانت
opponent.
ذات
She was
تفكير
in charge
وكانت
of
حنونة
their
جدا جدا، وكانت
her
عندها
people.
تفاوض في الصلح بين القبائل. لكن
She
كل ما كنا كانت تعرضنا
negotiated
لحرب
the
مع القبائل وكانت بتتفق
reconciliation
في حاجة
between
كويسة،
tribes.
ولكن عند المشاكل بنكون نحن في كده.
Tribes in
فالملكة مندي
Sudan coexist,
هزمت
but they had some
قبيلتها، ودي
disputes.
الصورة بتاعتها
She
اللي
was
الإنجليز بيقدروا
conquered
يفوتوا عليها.
and captured, and she was
فلحد كده وصلنا نحن لفترة
photographed.
من الاستعمار الإنجليزي.
This was in the time of the
شايفة
British
كده ماشيين
لا لا
colonial
احنا شايفينك.
معايا
colonization. Are you
طيب بعد
here?
كده
After
هسه قولي ايش
this,
اللي حصل في سنة
what happened
عام 1960.
from
كان النساء السودانيات ما زالوا في الحكم السياسي،
1960?
انه احنا عندنا غالبا
Women were
في
in the
1965
political
اختيروا في
participation.
البرلمان ليس
There was
بنظام نسائي او
around
نظام من
table where
لا
women
الحكم المباشر.
participated, where
وحسن
women were voted
الشيوعي
for.
في فترة يعني كان فيها حتى الفكر الشيوعي جديد على السودان.
The
فكانت
the
النشاط السياسي
communism
موجود عندنا،
was
كان
new in
النشاط
Sudan.
الاشتراكي وهكذا وهكذا.
there was
ممكن
this
لا ما داير
socialist
اقول المشكله
union,
عشان ما
and
اكون
also
بشخصن المواضيع،
there wasn't a
المجال
problem
الان
as a problem
السياسي
when the political
تحدث
Islam
تدريجيا في
appeared
71
in
انتهت اتخاذ السكينات
90
تغير الوضع
70
تماما،
something.
واللي هي
The
ظهرت
situation
لنا
had
الولايه
changed
والقوامه دستور
where
نحن
guardianship
يعني
and
بنعاني
protectorship
منها.
had
طيب
appeared
انا
that we are
عندي
suffering
عشان
from
احكي لكم
now,
عن الكلام اللي كتبته
because I
ممكن
want to tell you
يا
about the
ريت يا
text I
ريت.
have
انا الكلام
written.
ده حابه اقول لكم انه هو نوع من انواع
I
الجورنالينج، انا ما كتبته للنشر،
it
انا
was
بحب
just
اريح نفسي
like
وانا اكتب مقال
journaling. I
كتابي
just wanted
عشان شويه
just to
ارتاح.
relieve
ما
myself
عايزه
or
احكي
to
انه
write
انا
on
devastated
phone.
because انه انا مصابه
I
وحاجه
don't
في
want
ذاتي، وما عشان
to
ما
tell
اخش في
you how
الحته ديتا.
devastated I am because
فانا
of the war in
كتبتها
Sudan.
وبعدين
I
فتره
wrote
كده
this
كانوا بيسالوا يعني مساواه كتر خيرهم بيحاولوا يشوفوا مشاركات عن الوضع، لانه
MUSAWAH
حتى وضعهم مختلف لانه
were
انا
asking about
مشارك
the
حصل معي
reality
حاجه
in
للسودان في الجبهه،
Sudan, but
ولقيت
the war
ذاتي في حاله
took
بتاعت
place
تشويه،
was I
وانا
was
اطول ما
in
اتمنى انه بعيد
vacation.
من السودان، او
I
عندي
hate
شعور بانه انا
that
لا
I
اساوي
am
شيء في بلد
away
لا
from
يفهمني ولا يديني
Sudan.
تقدير، لانه لحد الان انا في مكان
I hate that
ما ابقى انا
my
صراحه في هذا المكان.
country
فكتبت
doesn't know
انه
anything
طبعا
about
انا
me.
قلت طيله العامين المنصرمين، لكن لما كتبتها كان سنه ونص. طيله
I
العامين المنصرمين فقدت فيها اشياء
during the
كثيره شكلت
past
بداخلي
years I
شكوك
lost a
وردود
lot that
عميقه وغائره،
shaped so many
بعضها
wounds inside
عرفتها
me.
وبعضها ظل ظلا داخلي لا
Some
اتفهم،
I knew,
ومن
some
بعض ما لم
were
احدده
shadows,
بوضوح واخذ مني
some
وقت
I couldn't
طويل وظل
identify
قارئا
and
في
took
قاعده
so
صدورتي،
many time
ضغط
and was
دائم
in the back
بيتجدد كل
of
يوم،
my
كان هو
mind,
الامن
very
والسجن
bleeding wound,
والبيت.
which
اخيرا
was
كتبت
my
انه
home
انا
and warmth. Finally, I
بفقد
understood what I
بيتي،
felt. I
بيتي
miss
طلقت
my
فيه
home,
نفسي وروحي
a
ولمسي،
home
بيتي
where
اللي
I
عشت
find
فيه
my
ولم ينسيني
soul
حزني
and
وفرحي
my
وخصوصيتي، ترى في
personal
أركاني
life where I have
ومحتوياتي
my
وتجاربي
sadness.
ومتعلقاتي
I
والأشياء
see in which
الخاصة
my
بي
belongings
والتي
and my
جمعتها من أماكن
property
مختلفة
that
وفترات
I
متباعدة،
had taken
بيت
from
أشد
so many
فيه
places.
أحلامي وألمس فيه
Uh,
الواقع وأربطها
a
بالمستقبل،
home where I
أخطط
see in my
لتغيير الإنسان
dreams,
فيه وأفتح طموحي على
where I
حياتي، وأضم
plan
قطعة
so many
أساس للفكرة.
things and piece
أما
together
الإدراك بحاجاتي
furniture
القديمة
and
أجد لها
fill the
شكل
drawers
جديدة،
with so many old
أغير
things
ألوان
and new
وأغير
things.
أواني
I
الأكل
change
والشرب،
colors,
أزين
I
طاولة
change
القهوة
food,
وأضع
I
جانبها اللبس
decorate
والمناديل
the
الخاصة
coffee table
بالقهوة
and put
عند
the
الراوية عشان
incense
أسمع
with
وأشرب
the phone
العناب
so that I
وصرصرة الهنا.
listen to my
فإن بيتي
favorite
ويكون
song.
الشيء
I want
الأساس
my
فيه
home
والبقية هي إضافات. بيتي
where
الأشجار
trees
النباتات
are the
الخضرة
main furniture.
الحقبالة
I
وراء المربع
want the
والتعبان الأحمر
plants. I want to
والكبسة
see
كمان
what
اللي بفتحها
is
مساحات، والسعادة تبدأ علي
tired. I
بينما
want to see
أصبح ورقة
happiness
جديدة.
on me
كثيرون
whenever
يعيشوا
a
يابسة
new leaf
ويشعروا فيه قدر
appears.
كبير من السعادة. مشتاقة
So
للبيت،
I miss the
فهذا
home,
مكانك وهذا
and
ركنك
the feeling
الصغير
of that this
وهذه
is
الدنيا
my
الكبيرة. أنت
corner from
تستصبحي
the whole
لنفسك
world that
ركن
you
فيه حب وراحة
allocated for
ورفاه وفيه
yourself,
حاجات كثيرة
where
تحبينها وكل
all
الأشياء
is
بتشبهك.
simple and
تراقبين أساس
all
بيتك وهي
very
القناعة
pleasing.
وشعر الغنى
You see your
والاستثمار، وتصنع عليه
furniture
علامة
as
القدم
they are
وتضحكي
used,
لأن
as they
هذا
look
معناه
old,
أنك
and you
تعيشي من
laugh,
الحياة
which
الحقيقية.
means that you are
بيت
living a
المثالي
real
يكون
life,
متألم
a home
يهديك القلب
embracing you
طوال
when
الليل،
you are in
بيت مع
pain,
أحبابك في
uh,
مقيل
a home
ومشاهي
where
وونست
uh,
يوم جمعة
put
ويونسوا
together your loved
وتحدينا تقابل
ones,
فينا نفسك.
a chat on
بيت تزرعيه
Friday or a
بنظافته
chat with yourself, a home
وترحبي به
where
بمستقبلك
you are
وبأي
pleased because
ذكرى
of its
هو يسامحك ويقول
cleanness
ما مشكلة التذكير ملحوق
and
بس أنت خليك
and
مبسوطة.
tidy,
البيت
and the
كلمة بروزها
home
بسيطة
forgiving
ولكن
you.
معناها عميق
The
وكبير.
home
البيت
is
شخصيتك
simple, but the
وعنوانك
home is your
وحنانك
character address
وحنانك
and
وإلهامك
your
وإيمانك وليس بحنين
bond and
وأمينها.
your
تدخل
hope.
عليه من أشرف معارك الدنيا وظلامها
You
وأهوالها
enter there
وتلقاه فاتح
after
بأبوابه وقلبه
the
ولطيف
heated wars,
يضمك ضمة
and you
تنسيك
find
كل
him very
المشاكل
embracing
وتعبك
and
ولنت حضنه
open
جميعا
armed.
ولمسه في
The
أذنك
embrace
أحلى
of
ضم،
the home
وأحيانا
is
ترى
very
بأسنانه
intimate,
يملأ المكان عندما
where
يبتسم
you
لك.
can
وقد
see
تكونين
the
محظوظة
shine of its
بتسمعي
teeth. You
ضحكاته
can be lucky
عندما
enough
يشاركك
to
في كنزها
listen its giggles
وأغنية حقيبة
when
وأنت تشربين دموعها.
sharing you
البيت هو أنت
some Habiba
عندما
songs. The home
تفقديه
is
تفقدين
you.
نفسك
When you
وحضورك
lose it, you
وأمانك
lose
الشخصي
yourself and
والشعور
your
بالانتماء.
personal
البيت
security.
وطنك الصغير الخاص بك
The home
بدون
is
بيت
your
فوطن
small
وأنت لا شيء.
home. Without a
خلصت.
home, you are nothing.
شكرا. شكرا دكتورة لاميا. لميا.
Thank you, لميا.
شكراً على كمان مشاركتك، تجربتك الخاصة جدا 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 في البيت.
Thank you for sharing
إنه
this
قلت
very
بيت
personal
أبقى فيه
testimony,
نفسي
this
وربي
home
وأسرتي.
in which I find
عايزة أقول
myself
لك
and
إن
which I find
إحنا
my
أوطان لبعض
intimate self.
لحد ما
We
نلاقي
are
بيت
each
جديد.
other's homelands until
بشكرك
things resolve.
وبشكر
Thank you
جميع
very much.
المتحدثات.
I would like to thank all those who have
خلينا نفتح
participated,
دلوقتي باب
and we will
النقاش
now
لو حد عنده تعليق
start
أو حد عنده
the
أسئلة.
conversation. If anybody has
ممكن
any
نبتدي
questions,
أنا شايفة إن ما حدش لسه كتب أي حاجة على
nobody has
الشات
actually written in the chat yet.
فنفيسة لو في
So, Nafisa, if
عندك
you
في
have
بورت
any
السودان بعض
issues that you'd like to raise from Port Sudan, maybe some
مداخلات
interventions,
ممكن نشاركهم
this
أو
would be
أسئلة.
the appropriate time to actually share them.
ونفس الحاجة الناس اللي
And
معانا
the
على
same thing
الشات على
goes
الزوم
for
يا ريت تكتبوا
those
في
who are
الشات
participating via Zoom. If
دي
you'd like
المساحة
to write in
بتاعتكم
the chat
دلوقتي
box, this is
مساحتكم
now your
انتوا
space.
المساحة
So we just
لو
allow
في
you
أي
this
تعليقات
space.
لو في
If
أي
you have any
أسئلة
comments,
لو
if you
في
have
أي
any
انطباعات
questions,
يعني من اللي
if
انتوا
you have any
سمعتوه هل اللي انتوا
impressions,
سمعتوه ده انتوا
any
حاسين إنه
reflections,
ممكن
do you
يكون له
feel that
واقع
what's been said
في السياق السوداني
is
الحالي؟
actually
هل
applicable to the current Sudanese
تقدروا تاخدوا
context?
الكلام ده
Can
وتعملوا
you
بيه
take
حاجة مثلا
this, can
حتى
you
مش
take
ضروري في
these
السياق العام في
observations
السياق
and these
الخاص
reflections and
بتاعكم
maybe
نحب نسمع
apply them
منكم.
at some level? We'd
هديل
just like to
اتفضلي.
hear from you. Hadil, please go ahead.
طيب
سامعيني كويس؟
Can
دلوقتي
you hear me?
سامعين اتفضلي.
أيوة. أنا بس كنت وأنا بسمع
Okay.
في الكلام ده
As I
كله
was
كنت في
listening to
بالي
all
إنه
this, I was
يعني
just thinking
وأنا كنت
to
بسمع في نفس
myself,
الكلام ده قبل كده أنا
when
سمعته
I've heard
يعني من
this
معظمكم وإحنا
multiple
برضو
times. I've
اشتغلنا عليه
heard it from
كتير
you. And we've worked on
وده كان
this
قبل الحرب بتاع
topic
15
extensively.
أبريل
This was before
وكان
the
برضو
war of
نحن في الوقت
15th of
بتاعك
April.
ونحن
At
بنعاين
that time,
لروسنا
we were looking at
وبنعاين
ourselves
لأوضاعنا
and we were looking at our
في
situation, our
عبر القانون
circumstances,
بتاع الأحوال
looking at the
الشخصية وكل القوانين اللي أصلا
public
يعني
laws
بتظهر فيها روح
and the
القوامة
family
والولاية إنه
laws,
كان
all
برضو
these
ده كان سيء
laws
جدا زي
which
ما قال
have
أستاذ
been
نحن بنقدر
so
نقول إنه نحن في
detrimental to
السودان
women
قد يكون
and
عندنا
how
أسوأ
they
واحد بيسمع
manifest
القوانين
women's
الأحوال
lives. We
الشخصية
have the worst
فهسه لما بسمع
personal
في الكلام ده
laws.
بعاين
When
لوضعنا
I
حاليا
listen to
بعد
all
ما
this and
بعد
when
الحرب
I look at our
وأوضاع النساء
abysmal
فعليا
situation
صارت
and
أسوأ
the
مليون مرة من
our
الوقت ذاك اللي
situation
نحن كنا
which has
بنعاين
become
فيه
far
وظروفنا
worse, which we thought we considered ourselves in such a bad
يعني حديد
situation. And now everything
يعني قادرة حتى
crystallizes,
لأول
and
مرة
now
أتفق
I'm
مع يوسف
able
إنه
to
حتى المسألة
actually
بتاعت
reflect
الاغتصاب
just
مثلا
even
يمكن
on
سمعت كلكم
this issue
إنه
of rape. You've
النساء في
all heard
السودان
about how
يعني من
women are
أول يوم
being
في
raped
الحرب
in Sudan,
يعني
how
بدأت
women's
الجرائم
bodies
بتاعت
have been
اغتصاب النساء
subjected
وإنه
to
تم يعني لغاية
violations and
الآن
rape,
نحن
and how
يعني
we
قاعدين
are
في
now even
يعني
now
زي في موجة
we are
عنيفة
in
يوميا
a massive
بإرغام ما بنقدر
wave,
نصدقها نفسها
a
يعني مو
deluge
مصدقين ممكن تحصل لنا
of
نحن كنساء سودانيات
figures
تحصل لإخواننا
of rape
السودانيات
and
يتم
violations. We could
اغتصابهم
never imagine
وكل
that
ما
this would happen
يحصل
to us on
يعني
this
يعني يحصل
systemic
استصحاب
level.
لمنطقة أو
The fact that
لمدينة
every
بيتم
time there
الإعلان عن
is
الحاجة
a
دي بأنه في اغتصاب
violation of a
النساء
certain
يعني
space, there is
يعني بديت
an
أعاين
accompanying
القصة دي
rape
من
of
منظور
women.
القوامة
So
والولاية
I've
إنه
just
ده
been
جزء من
thinking about
الخطة
this in
الفكرة
terms of
بتاعت إنه
guardianship, in terms of protection.
هم بيعلنوا
How are they
انتصار
actually
بأنهم يعني even حتى يمتلكوا
declaring
جسد
and
النساء دي
proclaiming their
وده إعلان
victories over our bodies, the
للفكرة دي
bodies of
يعني
women, and this
هطلب
idea
منك
that
بس معلش
reiterates
باختصار عشان في ناس تانية رفعت
reiterates
ايديها.
this issue,
ايوه
reiterates
انا
this
بس
issue
كل
of
ده كنت عايزه
guardianship.
اقول انه
So
نحن
this is all
يعني
I want to
المفهوم بتاع
say.
القوامه والولايه
This
بقى
idea of
يعني
guardianship and protection
تجذر
is
في
in
القصه بتاعت
deeply rooted in
المجتمعات
this issue,
السودانيه ظهر اكثر
specifically
هسه
in
في الحرب
Sudanese societies.
فنحن
It's
يعني شنو
manifested
يعني هسه قدامنا طويله
in the
جدا
aftermath of the war, or
وحنطلع
during the
بنتطرق
throes of
للرسل وان
war.
شاء الله
So
تجيها ونحن نبدا
hopefully the war
من
will end,
العيد
but we
من
will
ورا خالص يعني في
start
المساله دي
once again
شكرا
because we have regressed
شكرا يا هديل
greatly. We have
وسعداء
to start
بوجودك
again.
معانا تاني.
Thank you, Hadil, and we're very
نازك أنا
happy
شايفة إن
to hear from you.
أنت رافعة إيدك في ناس
Nazik, I can
عندك.
see that you would
هناخد
like to
3
share with
مداخلات
us.
وهطلب
So we're
برضو
going
من
to
المتحدثات إن هم
actually
يكتبوا
take
الأسئلة
3
اللي هم عايزين
contributions, and
يجاوبوا
maybe I'd
عليها
like
لغاية
to
أما
ask
نازك تيجي. إحنا عندنا
people to
كمان
also
سؤال
write in the
من
chat. We have a question
من
present
الدكتورة
from
دكتور
Dr.
نونتاندو.
Nontando.
دكتور نونتاندو
Dr.
بتسأل
Nontando is
هل في
asking,
اختلافات ما
are
بين
there
القوامة
differences
والولاية
between
تجليها
guardianship
يعني
and
في دول
protectionism
إسلامية
in
مختلفة
different
لو في أمثلة
Islamic
نقدر
contexts in
نعرضها
different
عليها.
countries?
طيب
If
نازك
this is the
اتفضلي.
case, I'd like to hear about this, please. Nazik, please go ahead.
باختصار لو سمحتوا عشان
And I'd
فاضل
like
لنا
you to be
بالظبط
as
8
succinct
دقايق.
as possible because we only have 8 minutes to go.
ونعرف اسمائنا.
And if we'd like to just introduce ourselves, please, that would be helpful.
من حوالي تغيير المعرفي. أنا جد شاكرة لكم.
I'm very grateful to you.
المشاركة السياسية للنساء.
I'd just like to speak about women's political participation and how the Islamic texts pertains to this issue. We need to set clauses because in the general understanding within Sudan,
مش سامعينك كويس للأسف، مش سامعينك كويس. ممكن تقربي على الكمبيوتر يمكن؟
طيب أنا بقول إنه نحن منتظرين.
I'm just saying that
شوية بس لو يعني
I'm just saying that
قربي أحسن فعلا. ازيك يا ندى؟
أهلا وسهلا بك. أهلا وسهلا بك يا مروة. أنا بقول إنه نحن في السودان عندنا.
I'm just saying that in Sudan
الملخص بتاع سورة النمل، لأنه يعني في فهم السوداني حتى عند الناس نحسبها منهم شيوخ وفقهاء.
Yeah, because even amongst people who we consider to be quite enlightened in Sudan, there's still some kind of detrimental understanding of women's positions.
شكرا. أرجو يكون المتحدثات سمعوا لأن أنا ما سمعتش كويس الحقيقة.
اللي أنا فهمته إن يكون في
What I've understood is that there need to be some observations and some clauses pertaining to what's been discussed.
ناخد آخر سؤال من
The last question from Nazik, and then we're going to move to Nafisa, please. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
شكرا.
طيب أنا بقول إنه إحنا في السودان الآن في حالة.
I'm just saying that in Sudan we are in a state of emergency and we are in a state of war. As the participants have already mentioned, and this has had a great effect on women's bodies. So how can we actually speak about women's participation in negotiations for peace? How can we actually think about this stage, this coming stage?
هل في حد تاني من عندك يا نازك ولا خلاص؟
لا كده خلاص كده خلاص.
No, this is fine. This is it. Thank you.
ننتقل لنفيسة.
Thank you very much. Nafisa?
طيب احنا عندنا سؤال من زميلتنا سلافة. هي
We have a question from our colleague Sulafa.
زينب صوتي واضح؟
Can you hear me?
واضح.
أنا عايزة أسأل بس سؤال
I'd
برجع
just like to
للمفهوم حق
question
القوامة أو للتفسير
about
حق كلمة
this
القوامة
idea of guardianship or the hierarchical nature of guardianship
كلمة بتصف دور الرجل
and how it describes men's position or duty to actually provide. But obviously, if they're providing financially, it means that they have the decision-making prowess. So he is the one who decides what happens, where women go, and when they go.
فده بيخلينا نرجع
This
ذاته
makes
للمفهوم
us pose the question in relation to the concept itself. And I'm not sure of the hadith, but there is a hadith which actually advocates for women's obedience to her husband as the pathway to heaven. So this actually reinforces this idea of this guardianship. Is this hadith a strong hadith? Whatever the point is, whether it be strong, whether it be weak, it still reinforces certain patriarchal understandings of women's positionalities. Thank you very much. This is an excellent question. Do you have any other questions to pose?
طيب في سؤال آخر من الأونلاين من
We have
أستر.
another question from Esther online. She's asking whether, because we know that Sudanese history is glorious. So, do girls actually learn about this glorious past? Do they know that they've actually managed to vanquish the Romans within Sudan? Are there any texts, any textbooks, maybe in English, which speak about women's roles, women's historical roles and their achievements?
أوكي، هل في أي
Are there any further questions in Arabic? We're trying to gather all the questions because all the participants will respond to these queries in one go.
طيب خلينا دلوقتي نبتدي.
Okay, we're going to start with what we have.
أعتقد في سؤال، خلينا نبتدي بالسؤال الأخير عن
I think we
القوامة.
have a last question about the hierarchy of guardianship. So, who dominates in relation to who spends money and the pathways to heaven. Yeah, thank you very much, Mulki. I'm going to answer very quickly between the different countries as well. I'm going to answer the first question. I'm going to speak about the different countries. So, in relation to the hierarchy of guardianship, this is an important question, and there are several interpretations and several analogies in relation to the feminist Islamic perspective. And this is the glory or the beauty of this interpretation. There is not a single interpretation, there are multiple interpretations, and one of the interpretations in relation to the text, we need to look at not just a single text, but we need to look at all the texts relating to divorce, relating to how to treat parents, how to look at all these verses in relation to a broader historical context, because we are used to this fragmentation, which it just fragments the verses. So we're calling for a more holistic reading of these texts. And there is a feminist Islamic perspective which stipulates that men are not always, it is not always incumbent on men to spend or to provide for their families. This is an alternative. So it is about who, the individual who actually provides, who gives justice, and who actually provides, and who takes responsibility. And it also negates the fact that men should provide, but that does not give them ultimate power. Spending money on the family is part of men's duties, but it also constitutes a part of his spiritual roles. It is part of his religious and spiritual life. So in relation to the hadith as well, how we actually look at the interpretation of these hadiths, whether they're strong, whether they're weak, the chain of transmission, in terms of the chains of transmission. So sometimes the chains of transmission are sometimes negated, even those which exist within Sahih al-Bukhari. Sahih al-Bukhari has been subject to multiple critiques, and because the hadith exists in Bukhari or Muslim does not mean that it is carved in stone and immutable. If we actually address the issue and thinking about the veracity of the hadith, we need to question whether the hadith is based in a context which is based on Islamic jurisprudence. Does it actually govern the rule of law? Does it actually govern the relationships between a husband and a wife? This is obviously not true, because the obedience of women to their men is complete conflict, is in complete conflict with the notion of the unicity of God. Because as Muslims, both men and women, and as the successors of God on the earth, it is up to us to engage in our spiritual elevation. So the fact that we think that our relationship to God is mediated by a husband or by a man is a form of misunderstanding the relationship of unicity of God and the relationship of Tawheed, which is the belief of God as the supreme relationship. We know that we would like to go back to these issues, we can share some of the sources that we have. In relation to comparing the different countries, there are different laws which pertain to family law in the different countries, and there are contexts where there are understandings, interpretations of Quranic texts which govern the law. In the example of Morocco, there is no concept of obedience to men being essential. There have been countries which have not looked at some of the elements related to women's guardianship. Some women have guardianship over education, and they have the capacity to become judges. They have the capacity to occupy very important and lofty political roles. So there are differences between the different countries, and we have to compare between the different contexts, Islamic contexts, in relation to how the law has been interpreted and how it has created a specific kind of jurisprudence specific to each country. So therefore, these are important elements which need to be addressed. There has been a predomination of patriarchy within the Islamic scholars, the classic Islamic scholars. This is not to be negated. And we have to go back to these elements. Thank you very much, Dr. Mulki. And MUSAWAH has actually created has tracked the evolutions of the different elements, the different laws as they have evolved, and we have managed to compile the laws which actually create the equity, create some kind of equity for women. So the idea of resorting to justifying polygamy on the basis of the interpretation of certain Islamic or Quranic texts. The idea that women need to travel only when the husband agrees to them traveling. So there is a different conceptualization of marriage as a partnership, which is non-hierarchical. So even if we introduce the issue of guardianship and protection, this needs to be a shared task. We'd like to ask you to be patient with us for a further 6 minutes. Does anybody else want to share anything with us? Perhaps Dr. Naveed, perhaps Hala?
تردوا على بعض الأسئلة أو الكومنتس اللي اتقالت.
مروة، أنا ممكن أتدخل سريع جدا.
اتفضلي.
في سؤال مباشر اتسأل عن المشاركة السياسية.
There is a direct question about political participation and being part of negotiation. The importance of such a session comes from that we need to be able to restore our agency, our capacity to invade the public space, because the essence of that we are deprived of our roles in the public sphere came from the claim that there are some Islamic traditions that the religion prevents us to be there. This is so ingrained in the public mentality. If we don't know and not be cognizant that this is very fabricated and that it is intended to exclude us from the public space, our participation would be limited and non-evaluation. I hope this knowledge strengthens us and emphasize that we need to have agency and voice to invade the public space. Niveen or Lamia, do you have any say on answering the questions? Niveen?
اتفضلي يا دكتورة لميا.
Lamia, you can.
لا بس أنا كنت حابة أنت يعني
اوكي.
I would like you to come first. I don't have more to add what Mulki and Hala said.
كلموا حلو قوي.
They were well articulate.
حكاية حق
I just want
وحكاية
to add
مسؤولية.
that it's not
يعني
just a right,
احنا
it's a responsibility.
مش بس من حقنا ان احنا
It's not that we
نشارك
are
في
entitled
أصواتنا،
to
دي برضه
participate
مسؤولية.
and have our voice.
يعني
It
ربنا
is our
بيقول المؤمنين
responsibility.
والمؤمنات
God
بعضهم
says
أولياء
that
بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون
believers,
عن المنكر.
female and
ليه
males,
ربنا
are
خص
responsible
الآية
from
دي
each other and
لازم
they have to
المؤمنين
enjoy good
والمؤمنات؟
and
لأن
forbid
احنا لينا نظرة مختلفة،
evil.
لينا
Why God
نظرة
says so? Because we have different
بحكم
views
تجربتنا
from
وواقعنا كنساء.
given our
صوتنا ده
realities and
مهم،
experience as women.
ضروري
Our
إن احنا
voices are important.
نشارك بيه
It's
على قد ما
important
نقدر.
that we be
مش
part of
لازم
the
إن
decision
احنا
making as we can.
يعني
We don't have to be
مناصب القيادية العليا، ممكن نبتدي
leading
شوية بشوية.
positions. We can
إنما
start
لازم
gradually,
نعرف
but
إن يعني دي مسؤولية
we have to know
وده
this is a responsibility
حاجة يعني ضروري إن احنا نقوم بيها.
and that
شكرا
we have to do it. Thank you
وشكرا
so
على
much.
يعني
And
المداخلات الحلوة اللي سمعناها من
and
الدكتورة
I would like to
والدكتورة
thank
هالة
the
والدكتورة
comments from
لميا
Hala Mulki and
وكلهم
Dr. Lamia and
شكرا
Dr.
شكرا
Marwa.
دكتورة نيفين.
Thank
انا
you,
بطلب من
Niveen.
زميلاتي ان هم
I'll
يشاركوا على
ask my
الشات بعض الموارد
colleagues
اللي احنا اتكلمنا
to
فيها
share on the chat
بدل
some
ما
of
دكتورة
the
لميا ترد.
uh,
وكمان في سؤال
resources
جاي
up
من
until
نفيسة،
Lemia
فكرة
replies.
انه طالما
There is
الانفاق
and
يفيد
Nafisa,
المساواة فالرجال
since
يمكن ان
the
يمنعونا من الوصول
spending
للقدرة على الانفاق حتى القضايا القائمة،
entails
وهذا ينطبق على المشاركة
coordination,
العامة
we can
والسياسية.
prevent them
لو
from
الدكتورة
spending,
لميا
and
بترد عليا انا
this
اقدر ارد.
applies
اتفضلي يا
to
دكتورة لميا.
the public
طيب
and
أنا
political
حابة أخذ
participation.
كده يعني
I
فرصة
would
في
like
الكلام بتاعي عشان الوقت،
to
إنه
briefly
كيف
say that
نحسن من هذا الوضع.
how
أولا
can we improve the
يعني
situation.
حسن
First,
الآن لدينا فرصة ممتازة جدا
we
عشان
have a
نقدر
great
نقضي على أشياء كثيرة
opportunity
جدا جدا
because
علشان
wars
نغتنم أشياء
destroy
أخرى.
so many things so that other things are
ففي
built.
الحروب دائما في فرص عشان
In
نبدأ من أول
wars,
وجديد
there are
حتى
opportunities to
رغم
start
الأحزان
from
الموجودة
scratch,
دي. والحاجة
despite
الثانية إنه
all the
طبعا زي ما
sorrows.
قالت
The other
الدكتورة
thing,
هالة إنه
as
النساء
Hala
أساسا
stated,
المقصود من هذه الحرب. الحرب دي اتعملت
women
مخصوص
are
للقضاء
targeted
على
by
الأعداء
this war.
للنظام الغائم.
War, the
ومنهم
war
الحرب.
has been launched
فدي
to
بتصل بس نحن في النهاية مع هذا الخراب الحدث
exterminate,
حيأثر علينا
terminate
فلازم
the
نكون جاهزين
enemies,
كنساء.
including women.
الحاجة الأولى لازم ننظم
The
نفسنا
first thing we have to
وأنا
organize
بالنسبة لي
ourselves.
الأهمية بالروح القيادية أو القيادة أو الليدرشيب مهمة
I
لنا جدا
think one
جدا
of the
كسودانيات.
leadership is
الليدرشيب
very
دي
important for
بتأثر كل
Sudanese women.
السودان. عشان كده دايما أنا بحب
Our
أتحدث عن إنه
context needs
التاريخ بتاعنا
leadership.
كانت المرأة
That's
فيه
why
قيادة
always I
وشاركت في
speak that
السياسة وما كانت
there
الصعوبات
is
بنفس
so
هذه الحجم
many
يعني. ليه نحن
leadership
بنتدهور من قبل
uh,
التاريخ عشان لما نجي
women
نمسك
leaders
السلطة
and
تكون ما
participation in the
عندنا
history.
ولا ذرة من أنواع القيادة.
Why has
فيجب
this
إن نحن
deteriorated up until that
نستغل
we don't have
قيادتنا
any
والروح القيادية
leadership
اللي
in the
عندنا
public sphere?
مع
We need to
بعضنا.
restore the
وحتى
spirit of
واحدة
leadership.
من الحاجات إنه النساء ذاتهم
Another
يجب إنه
thing,
مع بعض نكون أقرب
women
لبعض.
have
يعني
to be
الريسورسز
close to each other.
والإمكانيات والأوقات ما بتسمح لنا
The
بإننا
capacities and the time and
نتعامل
resources
بالاحترام والاتساع.
do not
ففي
allow us
التوقيتات
to
الحالية
work in
النساء لازم
harmony.
ينسوا
That's
الفروقات اللي
why
بيناتهم سواء كانت
women have
إقليمية
to
سواء كانت اقتصادية سواء كانت
forget
فكرية
about the
ونحن في النهاية
differences,
نكون
economic,
يعني
ethnic,
حاجة
or
واحدة
whatever,
جدا جدا مع
so
بعض.
that we
في
are
سؤال بتاعنا
unified.
بس إنه هل
There is a question
الكنداكات أو التاريخ
about
السوداني ده
that
مدرس؟ لا للأسف الشديد.
is this
معظم المناهج السودانية
Kandaka's
اللي
history
اتكتبت
is taught
لما
to
جانا التاريخ
women.
الرسمي اتكتبت عن طريق الإنجليز
The
أو المستعمرات
syllabus of
أو
Sudanese
بلادهم.
education
يعني نحن لما بدينا نعمل
were
المناهج
designed
السودانية
by
للسودان
colonial
كان جاء من
powers.
الفكر الإسلامي السياسي.
When we
ولذلك الكتاب
started
ذاته حتى السؤال
designing
العادي
our
مش
own
موجود يعني ما كان موجود.
curriculum, it was
فلذلك
done by the
أخواتي وبناتي
Islamic
المشاركات
systems.
السودانية عشان نحن في المستقبل نحاول نرسخ روحنا أحسن. شكرا.
I will share the resources of
شكرا
the
دكتورة لميا. أنا
Kandaka's
هرد
history so
سريعا
that we
جدا
coordinate with other
على
Sudanese.
السؤال بتاعك
I'll
طالما
reply
احنا في
quickly
القوامة فهم يقدروا يلاقوا النساء من
about that
القدرة على الإنفاق.
spending gives women the
احنا
guardianship.
بنعرف
That's why we
الإنفاق
have to
إزاي. ممكن تبقى
prevent
الست
spending.
قاعدة في البيت ما
This
بتخرجش بره
depends on
البيت،
how
لكن
we
بالفعل
define
دورها
spending.
جوه البيت ده
But
هو نوع من أنواع الإنفاق.
women
لما تيجي
households
ترعى
staying in the house,
تطبخ، لما
uh,
تيجي
uh,
تعمل إدارة
they are
حتى للبيت
spending
حتى
when
لو
they
تعبانة
manage the
هي
house
بتشتغل
and
وما
cook
بس هي
or
بتدير
cleaning, even if they she has some
ده نوع
maids.
من الإنفاق.
This
لأن لو
is
هي
this
بقت
is
شهر
kind of spending.
ماتت
If she
جوزها هيضطر
dies, God
يعمل إيه؟
prevents,
يضطر يجيب حد
what would the
يصرف
husband
على
do?
الفلوس،
He would
حد
bring
يهتم
somebody to
بالمقاوي يدفع
cook and
الفلوس،
take care of the
يجيب
kids,
حد
and
مدير شؤون
this person
البيت
would
ويدفع
be
الفلوس.
paid.
إذا النساء
So
بتنفق
women are spending, but with not direct money, but with their efforts. This is also a guardianship. We need to clear our mind and think what women really do. I hope this could be a beginning to understand the new understanding of guardianship, through which we see marriage as a cooperation between two. We're pleased that there are so many questions coming. Before I conclude, I ask Ghufran to share with us the evaluation link that you have to click, all of you, those in Port Sudan and Kassel and online. And while you are taking the assessment, I would like to ask you about your valuable time, where we have shared so many points. We try to cover so many aspects of guardianship and its impact on political participation of Sudanese women in Sudan. We would share with you the presentations that were presented here, and on the chat there are other resources that could be interesting for you. If you have further questions, you can send it via the emails on the chat. SIHA's emails and MUSAWAH's emails. We will try as best as we can to reply to your questions. I would like to thank the panelists and the participants. We also would like to thank the interpreters. Thank you so much. And last but not least, we thank SIHA for the great efforts and organization. And this idea of this session has been was presented by Hala last year. They are in contact with the realities in Sudan. We have to follow your lead so that we know more about the situation in Sudan. Let's hope that this session would be a part of the continuous work of women cooperation, so to boost peace and justice without discrimination. I would like you to fill the forms that would improve our performance and would take them very seriously. If you finish, you can just submit it, then we can release you. Thank you so much. Let's hear from Nafisa and Nazik. About the link of the form, then we will see. I see Nafisa's people are filling the form.
أعتقد الجروب من صيحة والمتحدثات لو يحبوا إنه إحنا نعمل بريفنج بعد الندوة يبقى كويس. أوكي.
We will do a briefing with the SIHA group after.